This is Between the Brackets, a Mediawiki podcast, episode 39, July 23rd, 2019. Welcome to Between the Brackets. I'm Yaron Koren, and this is another BTB Digest episode, number 6. For those who want to hear just the most relevant bits of the previous episodes, or rehear them if you heard the episodes before. But if you haven't heard them before and hear something interesting in these clips, I definitely encourage you to go back and listen to the episode or episodes in question, because there's a lot of good stuff in each one of them, wiki-related and otherwise. So, on to the clips. The first clip came from my talk with John Lewis back in March. John helps run the wiki farm that I was surprised to learn is pronounced Miraheze. I run my own wiki farm, Referata, although with not nearly as much care as Miraheze gets. So I got to compare notes, so to speak, to see what they do differently, and usually better than I do. We got into that a little bit in this clip when I asked John about the custom Mediawiki extensions that they've developed to help run Miraheze.
For Miraheze, this is actually one of the core things we wanted to implement from day one, which we call Mediawiki.
Right.
It's taken until the first quarter of 2018 to actually do it. And since then, we've gone from core settings like site name, public, private, closed, open, language settings to we now have the capacity to manage extensions, settings, permissions, and namespaces in the code base, with the obviously end goal to implement more or less every Mediawiki setting we can do.
Oh, yeah. That's interesting. Right, I was looking through the list of extensions that you guys have created. I didn't realize Mediawiki basically did the same thing as my site settings extension. Did site settings exist when you went to create Mediawiki? I guess it must have if you only did it about a year ago.
Yeah, I think it would have done.
Yeah, did you think about using site settings? That's the extension of mine that no one uses. But go ahead.
We viewed and evaluated existing extensions, but we always had the idea that we wanted to operate our own infrastructure completely. We wanted to be fully independent.
Yeah.
But obviously, extension-wise, as the base, we have CreateWiki, which obviously manages the wiki creation and base management of wikis such as open and closed. It allows other wiki farms as well to ideally create themselves really easily and quickly, because the extension code's kind of smooth and flawless in a way. It's not been fully tested on new setups, and we actually did have someone asking about it, and we've just not had a time to document it from scratch fully yet.
Yeah, okay. I was gonna ask if anyone's using these extensions you've created.
As far as we know, I think there was one person who's tried to set it up and actually has. Obviously, with quite a bit of help. But the issue with us is we created these extensions in 2015 as a base, and we've just set them up and coded around our structure. We've never actually looked at it and gone, let's reinstall this, see if it actually works from scratch, and what we need to do.
Yeah, I've had the exact same experience with Referata trying to open source the software that runs it. It's really it's a lot of work to get it from it works for me to something that's usable for other people. I have had one success, which is the admin links extension that came out of Referata.
Yes, we have that in our wikis as well.
Oh, cool. Okay.
We actually, I think we have about 100 extensions available to be enabled by anyone as soon as they want to.
Yeah. So what?
Is one of them.
Cool. So people it's just like a set of check boxes. People can just choose whichever subset they want. Oh, okay. Oh, fantastic.
Yep.
Next, I talked to Lex Sulzer, a Swiss wiki consultant whose company is called DataSpect. In this next clip, he talked about how he typically starts projects for clients, and it's a real testament to the power of Mediawiki as a tool for so-called rapid prototyping.
to be very honest, the most cumbersome part of setting up a prototype system at a customer premises is to figure out that company's domain ontology at the outset. For example, a meeting minutes ontology is probably among the simplest ones to set up.
Right.
But once that customer is sort of, and my goal is to really come up with an MVP, so a minimum viable product. And it should be minimum because you're scaring a lot of people when you bring in such a new system. So you have to be very gentle with, especially with the IT department. I think we all know that. So once that is done, I can deploy the entire infrastructure on a, for example, virtual machine. So I bring my own laptop that is powerful enough to do that. And we try it out. So in the ideal case, let's say 2 hours after sitting together and coming up with a domain ontology, the customer and their users can really have a first interaction with the system and a touch and feel experience.
Wow.
And then you actually just copy the virtual machine onto a USB stick and leave it with them and say, well, now play around. And hopefully they get the taste of it. And we'll then call you back and say, well, can we add this and can we add that? And I say, of course you can.
Okay, wow, that's amazing. I thought you were going to say a few weeks or something, but
no, that's exact. Of course, until you have a fully fledged system that really takes over some of the heavy burden, of course that takes longer. But what's important is to give a first glimpse very early. And I can really do that, let's say, certainly on the first day. Of course, then all that ontology part and so on is confined to the standards that I have. But I try to keep things, as standardized as possible, and then we can spend a lot of time on the special effects for certain customers.
Yeah, that's I guess a far cry from the major consulting companies who I don't know, IBM or whoever else who show up and it's like a 6-month deployment or something and lots of proposals generated and all that kind of stuff to do any kind of enterprise integration work.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know about
it's
6
just
months,
you have to. Well, that is many times. Of course, that was I've experienced that as well. But it's very trust building when you have someone turning up and after, let's say, half a day, you can look at something that is still standardized and maybe not, decorated with all your particularities, but at least you can try it out. It's like, a car salesman bringing up the car in 2 hours and you can have a first test drive. You say, it's not my color, it's not the size, but I got the feeling of it.
After that, I talked to Andre Klapper, who works at the developer advocacy team for the Wikimedia Foundation, as well as serving as the official bug wrangler. We talked a lot about both developer advocacy and bug wrangling, but for this episode, I picked a clip that was more timely. In addition to both of his official tasks, Andre basically single-handedly redid the front page of Mediawiki.org back in April, after it had remained more or less unchanged for over 10 years. I asked Andre whether the main principle behind the redesign was making the homepage look simpler and cleaner.
I was mostly after cleaner because my problem was really I was personally confused by all the navigation elements and link lists. And when I started on this, I printed out the old front page at that time and took my notes on paper and realized like some elements or some links existed 3 or 4 times to the very same target page. Or just already the amount of navigation elements. There was a top bar, there were links below, there is the sidebar. There was also enough information when I thought, is this now really relevant when I go to this page for the first time? And it's also the usual, how can I find things? In my ideal, you're after achieving something or performing a task. So it's more like a how do I this and that. So I prefer to categorize by verbs, like set up or install or something like that, instead of roles. That's another thing.
Sure. No, it makes sense because I mean, someone who's a sysadmin still also has to know how to edit art pages, etc. So yeah, speaking of roles, and you mentioned the four groups that it appeals to. The current front page is interesting in that it seems a little more geared toward developers or potential developers than toward potential users, which seems to me like maybe reflecting your involvement in developer advocacy. But I don't know if you'd agree with that statement.
I'm not sure. Like for me, it felt like a good compromise between all the groups. Hopefully, we need to cover users, administrators, developers, established folks, the same as people going to that website for the very first time. There's also like, for example, how much do you wanna advertise related stuff like translations, tag ambassadors, researchers, documentation writers, testers. There's a lot of roles, and like, how much do you want to cover that already? There's links now bringing you to further, let's say, resources, how to contribute page, for example, which lists all these things, but it's currently not on the front page. And also, when it comes, there was a follow-up discussion after I deployed that change or put that website up, that new front page, like that's what you mentioned earlier, like a more visible download button or something like that. So somebody did actually change the order of the boxes so that download is now the first item, which probably makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, right.
So somebody also brought that up, like download should be more visible, and my reply was, you are probably right. It's an aspect I didn't think about enough or didn't receive feedback beforehand by somebody who cared. So it's great that you care. Please just go ahead and do it, because I'm not the owner of the website. It's a wiki.
Are you encouraging anyone who has admin access to modify the front page?
Yeah, why not?
Really?
Let's say, of course, it needs to make sense. There needs to be a good idea and an argumentation behind it. But that's like with every kind of wiki edit, like there needs to be a reason why you make that edit. And
right.
It's the usual be bold culture, and then if other people have other arguments against it, revert and discuss, I would say. But I don't see it as a very different page to any other wiki page just because it's a front page. Of course, it's more visible. Of course, you need to maybe think twice. But in the end, it's a wiki, yeah.
My next interview was with Alex Tanchoco, who runs the internal wiki called Datapedia for the Sloan Kettering Memorial Cancer Center. In this clip, he talks about how, with the benefit of Semantic Mediawiki and some other extensions, their wiki went from being just a place to store their medical glossary to something more like a major database.
Our DBAs, they have their own tool, Enterprise Architect, where they keep, all that stuff. But it's really not available to the community, right? It's really a tool specific to those group. So, we're trying to democratize, the information, the analytics, as the need for analytics grow, it's more difficult for, our team to accommodate all the requests. We get backlogged with, especially we support cancer research, operations and that sort of thing. And, the amount of requests for queries, and some of the queries gets like really complex. Talk about, we have hundreds of tables and thousands of columns.
Right.
From the different systems, and how do you join all this information, right? With this giant SQL queries. and am I looking at the right field for this particular topic and that sort of thing.
Right.
And
Sure.
with tying all that stuff with semantic Mediawiki is really very powerful. I mean, originally we really just looked at the page, like a text page, essentially. That was the beginning. But as I discovered, I stumbled, and in the process of doing the wiki, I stumbled on the semantic Mediawiki, and I started creating. As I started creating the forms, essentially, our wiki had become a database.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's like really very powerful to be able to do queries. So I created templates. I created forms associated with that and queries. And it's really very powerful.
Finally, for the last show in this digest episode, I talked to Derick Alangi, who was a freelance Mediawiki developer when I talked to him, although by the time the episode aired, he had already started working for the Wikimedia Foundation in the learning and evaluation team. I asked Derick about how he got involved with Mediawiki in the first place. The Silicon Mountain he mentions, by the way, is a nickname for the area of Cameroon in and around the town of Buea, where he lives.
I majored in computer software engineering. Then back then, I think that was 2013 or so, two guys from our university, Isaac Kamga and Nyachek, did the Google Summer of Code, and they were the first two people from sub-Saharan Africa to actually participate in the Google Summer of Code program. And from their experiences, they came at the university, they talked about it, they encouraged people to actually participate. That was like where the global recognition of Silicon Mountain really started. Then a lot of people got into technology, and we were already into technology, but we were not engaged in programs like the GSOC programs and all these big contests around. But we're already doing programming. Right. So I started looking for some organizations that I can contribute to in the Google Summer of Code program. Then I saw there were a lot. JCC was there, JIT was there as well. Then I checked Wikimedia, and their vision, like making and promoting free content, free knowledge to the world, it somehow aligns with my personal hobbies, like my personal things that I like doing. So I gave it a shot. I applied. Before applying, I was talking with people on IRC and getting help and support, making patches. Then a couple of months after that, I applied for the project and got selected. After that, I didn't just want it to be like, just come, contribute and go. Since the mission of the foundation and the movement as a whole actually aligns with my personal interest, I decided to create a ripple effect in my community and in Africa at large, where I would encourage more people to code and encourage more people to contribute to platforms where they can see more and more people around the world benefiting from free knowledge. And that was how my whole Mediawiki contribution just continued till today, that I'm still in the system.
And that's it for this BTB Digest. I hope you liked it, and I hope you'll listen to the next episode, which will feature an all-new guest. Take care.